All right, well, hello everybody and hi. It's been a little while since we've connected with all of you, and I'm really excited that we're going to be showing some of the new updates as part of Adobe Document Services, our API and automation platform, as part of the episode today. So today we're going to jump into some of the cool features in some of our December and January releases. That includes content fragments, styling and document generation, updates to Microsoft Power Automate, connectors, and so really cool stuff. And with that, let's jump right into it. So hello everybody, I am Ben Vanderberg. I'm Principal Platform Evangelist for our Adobe Document Services, and I'm going to be joined as well today by Ray Camden. Ray, why don't you give a quick hello?
Hello, quickly.
Awesome, cool. So Ray is going to be showing us some really cool things of what we have available as part of the new releases. Now, one thing to also keep in mind is that as we're also going through this, there are a number of blogs and information that you can go onto. So if you go onto the Adobe Tech blog, Ray recently posted an update on there to learn more about the January release and how you can get the most out of those. So go over there and check some of that out to be able to get started there. So as we go through today, we're coming live. So please drop your questions into the comments section on whatever platform you're coming from. I think that's usually on the right-hand side of things. But drop those in there and we'll try to answer them throughout the show, either via text or we'll also jump into that as part of some of our Q&A as well. Also, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube to get notified when we have the latest episodes, which we have monthly, in the last week of the month on Wednesdays. So first up today, we have a new feature, which is content fragments. Now, part of the challenge that you have when generating documents from templates is you might have a lot of different related elements together. For example, think of like an address where you have a street, city, state, and zip. But most of the time, we write all of that together in one kind of chunk, and it has a specific format to that. Now, you don't want to have to write that every single time that you put that into a template. Ideally, you just want to have one tag and be able to drop that in and use that across different templates. That's what we've done with content fragments within Document Generation API. So to show us that, I'm going to hand it over to Ray to give us a quick run through of what that looks like. Ray?
All right, so in this very, very short document, I have 4 or 5 tags being used. I have first name, last name, role, and salary. So yeah, 4 tags. What I want you to notice though is that every time I use a name, so first name and last name, I always use them together. If we look at our data, we can see it looks like this. So I have my first name value, I have my last name value, and my role and my salary. Now, what fragments allow us to do is to recognize when we have things that are repeated and things that we could simplify. If I go back to the Word document, again, you'll note first name is always used with last name. So I can create a fragment that combines that. I'm going to go back to our code. And we could see I have another JSON file. It's called fragments.json. And I've defined a fragment that's named full name. It consists of 2 other tags, first name and last name. And notice the space in there. And for the heck of it, I went ahead and built a last name first version as well. Now what happens is that now with document generation, I could take my data, I could pass this in. I could also take my fragments. And then what's nice is that I can use these fragments as a simpler alias. So if I go back to the Word document, all I did was go to the next page. And you can see now I have dear full name and then, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, this offer is only for full name. So my Word document is a bit simpler now. Now, the output is pretty much what you expect. Dear Raymond Camden, blah, blah, blah. And on the second page, I have the exact same thing, which is what you expect. But again, if we go back to that Word document, just notice how simpler it is. What's really cool is that in your organization, you may find multiple things that make sense for fragments, and you can essentially create a library of these that can make all of your different documents a bit simpler and a bit easier to use.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. And one of the things that I love about that is the fact that you can use that and create that library that you reuse for every single template. So it almost is like a bag of tricks for you to be able to reuse over and over again. I'm curious, what are some of the other examples where you're personally using some of this new fragment stuff, and how are you going to take advantage of it and use it?
So I think the best one, and this comes from our docs actually, is addresses. I almost always use a complete address. So street, city, zip, state, etc. And again, our docs has that as an example, and I think it's the number one thing that will impact most people. And then I think every industry out there is going to have its own things that they know internally, like, oh, we do X, Y, and Z together all the time. Insurance companies, for example. I just had to file a claim manually, and there was 2 codes I had to put in there, and I assume that they go together a lot, and they know that. And I can see different types of organizations having similar fragments.
I agree, and I'm really excited to see what our customers are going to be using that for, kind of in the next couple months as people start getting used to that. So that also brings us to another feature that we have that's coming, or now available rather. Oh, by the way, if you want to learn more about fragments, do also go onto the website, into our documentation, where you can get started using that and walk through some of those docs there. So the next feature that I wanted to touch on was dynamic styling. One of the things that we heard from some of our customers is you want to be able to pass styling into your Word-based templates, like bold, italic, changing colors, and all that type of information. You want to be able to change in order to do that. And so let's walk through to have a look. Ray, I'm going to hand it to you to see what that looks like.
Okay, so I'm going to show an example of how to use styling information within your data. So on this Word document, which by the way gives you a nice list of what's supported, you can see that I have one tag, bio. Now what I want to do is use the supported styling stuff to make the output from just that one simple tag a bit more nicer and a bit more dynamic. So I'm going to click Generate Document. It's going to give me a sample value for bio, and I have some nicer data over here. I'm just going to paste this in. And you can see in the sample, I have a strong tag, I have italics, I have a span that is specifying color and font weight, and I also have a link. So we'll go ahead and generate this document. And what we're going to see is that simple bio will be nicely styled. It'll be styled. I'll say that. All right, so we'll do View Document, and we can see I see the bold, I see the italics, the span with the styles there, and I could see a link, and it works as expected.
All right, cool. I was having a little bit of a connectivity issue there, as I think we saw from my freeze before there. But one of the things that I love about that is the fact that the styling and stuff is something that is HTML based. And I love that because that means that all those different templates are ones that you could have, especially coming from a CMS or from other systems. And let's be honest, a lot of people know HTML these days. So it allows you to be able to do that. Ray, what are your thoughts on where you think, what excites you most about that?
Well, I'll start off by saying I'm not quite sure HTML has a future. I mean, really, it's only been around for 30 years. No. What I like about this is that it's something that we could have done when this feature first came out. fragments too. Like I could have done it by hand. I could have done it by in code. A lot of this stuff are things that we could have done, but that are a heck of a lot easier now. And I love to see that in a product where, yeah, I could do anything with the product, but this is hard for people. And like styling would have been hard to do dynamically. And we're just making it easier and easier with each release, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I like about it is that it also makes it portable. So when you're creating things for like documents that are going into document generation, that's great there. But if you're also taking those same elements of information and pushing them, say, into HTML, you're not having to reinvent the wheel over and over again. Another interesting thing was I was also recently working on a project where we were using Microsoft Power Apps, and inside of there, there's a field which is a rich text field. And so in there, when it stores it, it can save things like all the styling information. And it made it super easy for me to tie it in with document generation so that all of that styling got inherited when it got pushed into the document. So I found that really, really handy when that was available. So with that, we got another new feature that we're going to be highlighting now, which is, and I need to remind myself of this. Also, the documentation is up on the website for you to be able to learn how to use some of the styling in some of your own projects. All right, so the next new feature here is images from URL. Now, images from URL is a request that we've gotten from customers. Part of the problem that we've heard from customers is that they want to be able to, instead of pushing data of the image into your JSON data as base64, which we support already, there's already a lot of repositories that exist to be able to allow you to store your documents. So ideally, you want to be able to just pull those from a URL. So Ray, why don't you show us a little bit of what that's going to look like here?
All right, so this is a fairly simple Word document. It has one tag in it named image, and you can see the image placeholder here. I'm going to go ahead and click Generate Document, and you can see the default data will include some base64. So if I hit Continue, it's going to generate the PDF from that. I'm going to let it work, and we'll do View Document, and we could see. So the default is just a light gray color. But what's really cool is that in this update, we can supply a URL. And it's not hard to work with base64, but you know what's easier than base64? Is just a simple bit of text. So I'm going to do a placeholder image here. And again, that's a valid URL. It is HTTPS. We'll do continue. And and it's working. There we go. All right, view document, and there is our image. And that is an example of using a URL instead of base64.
This is just not my day for technology. So Ray, I was just having a look at that, and it reminded me one of the things that I think we were talking about the other day, where like a lot of times like WordPress and other content management systems already have those images stored, but being able to reference this makes that a lot simpler to be able to just reuse that stuff instead of reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've also found that is helpful is particularly like here at Adobe, we have also a number of different customers that use things like AEM assets for storing their documents. So I'll be excited where that's going to be able to be used to simplify a lot of that rather than having to pull down that the document data and then push it into the data in there. I think it simplifies code quite a bit. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, so I know working with base64 and JavaScript is trivial, but it's also something I've not memorized in the last 20 years of using JavaScript. I have to look it up every single time. So I don't, I don't dread doing it at all, but I have to look it up. So having just a URL is easy. I also like the fact that there's numerous services out there that are URL based. So, for example, charting services where you can just pass your data in a URL string, which can be a bit unwieldy, but also means that bam, you get a dynamic chart via URL, and that will work great in this example.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So thank you for that. We have our next one, which is, what do we got here? Oh, and by the way, everybody, um,
All
as
right,
we,
so
um, if you do want to learn more about some of the image stuff, also check out the documentations. Actually, in our general image tags, our general tags, you can also include any of your image things in there. So now what we're going to do is we are going to jump to tables, where we're going to learn a little bit more about how we can take advantage of using dynamic tables. Now, we've already had the ability for you to be able to add and remove different rows, but now we're making it much more flexible for you to add and remove things like columns or set conditions there. So Ray, why don't you give us a quick look at what that looks like?
all right, so let's look at another really interesting update to document generation. I have a table here where I am expecting rows of information that include a cat's name, their age, their gender, and their weight. And if we look at the data, we could see that I have everything except that weight is going to show up blank. Now, that's not going to break anything. If we take a look at how that renders, I have a nice table. I have all my data, but weight is kind of a wasted space. I don't know why the weight's not there. Maybe it'll show up later, but right now it's wasted space. So what's cool is that I can actually go into my Word document, and into that column I can add a bit of code to the end. Discard dash if dash empty true. And what this will do is look out for a column that's empty. Now, when I look at the output, I'll scroll down to that second page, you can see not only is that empty column gone, so is the header as well. I will point out, along with a hide a column if it's empty, we also have the ability to hide a column based on some particular condition that matches your business logic.
So if you want to learn more about that, you can also check that out again in our documentation. But I'm going to also bring up Ray again. So Ray, one of the things that I was just thinking of was like, what are some of the practical ways, aside from like that where we were looking at adding and removing? I think there were a couple of other things that we also have been adding that was more like dynamic tables based on the amount of additional columns we have. Wasn't that also an addition that we had?
No, it's the ability to do a horizontal table versus a traditional vertical one. And the best example of the horizontal table, and again, our docs have this, and I thought it was great, is a typical product comparison chart. Works great in that direction. And that too is just one more template directive type thing that I don't memorize because our docs have it there.
Yeah, I'm just, I think that's a perfect example of like the almost like the white paper comparison when you
Mm.
pull those out with the little like bullets that show what is included, what's not included. And a lot of times those are manually designed. And if you could have that something that you're just pushing based on the latest updates, then that could be much easier there.
Mhm. That
So,
reminds me. Now I need to build a demo that does like a check mark or a red X based on data. Uh, we should support that, but you may have to do a little bit of conditional type logic in there. I'm going to build that right now. I'll be back in a minute.
all right. All right, so we got now one final thing that we're going to show, which is some new updates to our Power Automate connector. So as part of our Power Automate connector, now we've had Power Automate connectors for quite a while, but we're going to have a look at some of the new updates with PDF properties and extract. So let me switch over here and walk you through that. All right, so as a quick recap to everybody, if you're not familiar, Adobe has a variety of different connectors inside of Microsoft Power Automate. So in here, if you go to the connectors and search for Adobe, you'll see connectors for Adobe PDF Services for automating your document actions, Adobe Sign for electronic signatures, as well as Creative Cloud for the creative folks within your organization. PDF Services already has a number of different actions for generating documents, OCRing PDF documents, and so forth. But the new connectors that are about to become available are the PDF Properties API and the PDF Extract API as new actions. The PDF Properties action allows you to be able to take your documents and get information about that PDF, like for each one of those pages, the size of the pages, whether they contain images, whether it's scanned or not. You can also get information about whether the document has been tagged for accessibility, whether it's been certified or encrypted with a password, whether it's been digitally signed with a digital signature. All this information is extremely helpful for you to be able to sort out those documents automatically without having to manually review. Along with that, if you also look at the additional actions that are going to be available in here, and I'm going to show you based on our pre-release connector because this is a sneak peek, but these will be coming available in the coming days. There are also the extract steps here for extract images from PDF, extract the PDF structure so you can get the actual contents of the PDF. You can also get things like the tables and images, and those tables come out as Excel files, so you can easily pull information out of those documents. So super powerful. So to show you an example of this using the PDF Properties API, I'm going to turn this into test mode here. And I am in my OneDrive here. You can use SharePoint or anything like that. And I have a number of different documents. And based on the information about this document, it's going to tag this appropriately. So some of these documents are scanned documents. Some of them are just normal PDFs. Some of them have been signed with Adobe Sign, and some of them have been signed with things like DocuSign. Regardless of those, we're going to drop those in here. And when we do that, it's going to trigger a flow to start to stop and analyze every single one of those documents and then tag those with metadata to provide more information. And if they require some action and some review, it will then assign a task for a person to review that through Teams approvals in the Microsoft Teams app. And we're going to see that it's already started tagging this with information. It tagged this document for that it was signed with Adobe Sign. If we open this up here, it's going to open up using the document cloud viewer directly inside of SharePoint. And sure enough, this document was signed with Adobe Sign. We can see the audit report here, as well as the signature in there. We can also see that this last document, this release form, was detected as being scanned. And what it did as part of our flow is it used our PDF Services action to then OCR that document. So it's now searchable within SharePoint, and then send it for review to review if the person actually signed that document because it's scanned. Sometimes you don't see that. So once it's done that, if I go over to my Teams approvals, we'll see that in my queue, I have a document that I need to review to confirm the signature. And I can click to open up that document for me to be able to view directly from the task in here. I'm going to open this up using the document cloud viewer in SharePoint again here. And then once I do that, I see that this definitely was a scanned document, but PDF Services OCR'd that, so now it's actually a searchable document. And if we go down to the bottom, sure enough, this was signed by Jane Doe. So we can go in here and just say approve. And once we do that, it's going to change the action inside of SharePoint, update the metadata to say that it has now been reviewed and completed there. These are powerful elements for you to be able to automate a number of different actions with your documents and cycle those through your different workflows. And along with that, if you want to also learn more about how to use PDF services within Power Automate, the connector is already available within Power Automate, so you can go get started. And there's also a number of different templates in there. Now, as I mentioned, this is a little bit of a sneak peek. We haven't released the PDF properties and extract just yet. Again, just coming days. We're just waiting for a couple things to finish up before those get posted in there. But really excited about some of the ways that that's going to help people automate different types of document workflows within Microsoft 365. So, Ray, any thoughts on that? I think that was the first time that you got to actually see that.
It looks cool. Like, my experience with workflow engines is outside of the Microsoft space. So I've had one experience, and just seeing how Microsoft has done it, it's just been incredibly impressive. I'm just really excited about the things that are allowing non-developers to build stuff. That's basically taking what I do and making it available to more people. And everything I see in that space, I know some engineers see it as a threat. I just see it as, again, making things more available.
And I look at it as giving yourself an opportunity to actually connect on things that you otherwise said, that's too much effort, I'm not going to go into that. Like, if I was going to do that all in code and I wanted to go connect to insert app here, Twitter or some other thing, now I have to learn that API. Now I have to go figure out how they did it that way versus something that it's just clicking, adding an action, passing authentication, and poof, it magically works. I think it just opens up different ways that you're working rather than it being like a threat that all developers are going to go away. Trust me, that is not happening. Developers have a very, very, very long, prosperous life ahead of them. If anything, I would say it's only getting more developer-y. So those are some of the main things that we had to show. If you have any questions, feel free to drop on. We have a couple of minutes that we can absolutely answer any questions before we start wrapping things up. Ray, I know one of the things that, as it relates to document generation, some of the things that you showed, it's been a couple of months since we have been on. So what are some of the other things that we kind of missed that we may have not touched on since, say, like September, October last year?
So the Word add-in has been updated. It's been kind of like minor updates, but it's getting a little bit more friendly to use. Like, for example, in the latest update, the Adobe Sign stuff, which is pretty complex, has its own tab. So just from an organizational ease of use type things, there's been some good improvements there. From what I know, that's automatic. You don't have to do anything. I just opened up Microsoft Word and I saw the change. So that's a good thing. The other big thing, I'm not sure if we've mentioned this, but I don't care. I'll mention it again, is that a couple months ago, we modified it so that you don't have to have the JSON data already. You can just create your own tags. And I don't mind writing JSON, but I don't mind not writing JSON as well. And so again, that's just one more thing that makes it easier to use and get started with.
Actually, I think you changed my thoughts on that a little bit, because initially I was like, well, you would just take the data from whatever the data source is and drop that in there. But as I think it was a session that you were doing last month where you were really kind of focusing on some of the build your own schema for the template and just merge it into there. As I was starting to look at that, I went, that makes that a lot easier because you're thinking about it in the context of the template rather than the data, which sometimes can get very complex and not human friendly.
And what's nice too is that even if you build your own schema, before you generate, we put sample JSON out, you could take that, you could save it, and then you come back to Microsoft Word later and use that instead of rebuilding those tags from scratch.
That's a good point. All right, so I am going to start wrapping things up here. Ray, thanks so much for walking us through some of those demos today. Appreciate that. And if you want to learn more about our document services, head on over to our website where we actually have done a whole new site. If you've been there maybe a month or two back or even a couple weeks back, it's been rebuilt from the ground up. The good thing about this is that there's a lot of new information on there. Don't worry, any of your links that you may have bookmarked will still resolve and bring you to the right spot. But go ahead and check out. And for those of you who are new, there's also a free trial that you can get started using our PDF services. So go head up on there. Along with that, we also have an upcoming event that is going to be coming, which is Adobe Summit. Adobe Summit, which is the great place where you can see all the cool things that you can do with digital experiences. We have 3 different sessions related to that. We have one where we're going to be touching on using the PDF Embed API for embedding PDF experiences into your websites and get analytics using Adobe Analytics. We have another session where we're going to see, Ray's going to show how you can use Adobe document generation tied in with Adobe Commerce. And then we have a third one where we're going to be touching on some of the automation workflows that you can do with our integration with Workfront, our Adobe PDF Services, and Adobe Sign. So a lot of exciting things coming as part of the Adobe Summit part. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for everybody coming today. I hope you found something to get out of this. We look forward to seeing you next month. And with that, have a wonderful day.